this is Mr. Byer giving a brief intro to some of the awesome things we'll see on our field trip at RISD this week. Egypt is the oldest of the civilizations we'll encounter. Egyptian civilization arose around the Nile River 6,000 years ago, 4000 BC. They built impressive pyramids from 3000 to 2000 BC containing mummies, like this one, which you will see at RISD. Thousands of years later, ancient Greece reached its golden age around 500 BC. Two of its city-states were Sparta, famous for their fighting prowess. This is a Greek battle helmet that you'll see at the museum. And Athens. Here's the Parthenon, which the Athenians built in their capital, and some Athenian pottery you'll see at RISD. After the ancient Greeks came the Romans, who conquered all the land surrounding the Mediterranean Sea, which they called our sea accurately. Roman legions were nearly undefeatable in the field. And this sarcophagus at RISD shows their fascination with Greek culture. Pompeii was a Roman city that was buried by Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, preserving it as if a snapshot in time. Here are some wall paintings that we will see at the museum. All things come to an end. Rome, which called itself the Eternal City, was sacked by barbarians around 500 AD, and the Roman Empire shattered into the separate countries of Europe, France, Spain, Italy. That became the countries we know today. Even though these countries were no longer one empire, they were still tied together by their Roman heritage and, most importantly, by Christianity, the religion that had conquered the empire even as it fell. This era became known as the Middle Ages, or medieval times, or the Dark Ages. Notice that this knight bears a cross. He's a Christian warrior. Great churches called cathedrals were built, but even now the Roman heritage lived on. The Colosseum shown here, or a Roman aqueduct such as the Pont du Gard here, contain arches just like this one, which you'll see at RISD from a Christian church. Another kind of Christian warrior, so-called, was the monk who lived at a monastery and preserved culture for us of the Romans and the Greeks by writing illuminated manuscripts, such as this one from RISD. This might have taken years for him to write and illustrate by hand, and you can imagine he would have charged quite a bit of money for it at the end. This was how culture was preserved through the Dark Ages, until the Renaissance burst forth in Italy. Renaissance meaning rebirth. Artists such as Da Vinci, Mona Lisa's here, or Michelangelo with his God creating Adam here, created new works often inspired by the Greek and Roman myths. This painting you'll see in RISD shows the Golden Apple story, or this one, the story of Perseus saving Andromeda, having recently slain Medusa, this snake-haired monster. Alright, we've started in ancient Egypt, moved to Greece, then Rome, which became medieval Europe, and then the Renaissance. Now it's time to shift all the way across the world to India. Here in India, in around 500 BC, a young man is born who becomes known as the Buddha. He preaches a peaceful philosophy that still inspires hundreds of millions of people today, especially in East Asian countries, such as China and Japan. Note the dark colored areas in this map. And now one more trip, we will go to Japan, where the age of the samurai in the 1800s. If you think of knights and castles when you think of medieval Europe, you can think of those too with medieval Japan, except that the knights were called samurai, swordsmen with frightening weapons and single-minded devotion to their warrior code. The palanquin we will see at RISD did not threaten to kill the commoners that it was carried past in a Japanese street, bearing a princess or noblewoman, but it spoke power to them just as loudly. Alright, let's zoom out and review the various objects we're going to see. First, in ancient Egypt, we see a mummy. Hey, not that one. Here's the one we'll see at RISD. And next, we will slide over to ancient Greece across the Mediterranean, Sparta, a war helmet, Athens, cultural center. Then comes the Roman Empire. Here's a sarcophagus showing the Romans' love of the Greeks, and some walls from Pompeii buried by volcanic ash. In the Middle Ages, we'll see an arch from a church, illuminated manuscripts written by monks, preserving culture through the Dark Ages. Then comes the Italian Renaissance with mythologically inspired paintings, such as these two. Then shifting over to the east, in China and India and Japan, here we have the Buddha. And finally in Japan, a palanquin. After that, we will hop onto our school bus and go back to friends.